قرآن واسق حياتي قرآن.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we'll start the lessons from Juz 1. In this series, we'll be learning the lessons, the inspiring lessons from the Holy Quran.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
The first lesson we get from Juz 1 is reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All Quranic verses in the Holy Quran start with this ayah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, except Surah At-Tawbah. Every believer believes and relies on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all affairs. If we rely on Allah in all cases, He will fill our lives with blessings. There is a hadith from Imam Rada alayhi salam in which he says that the distance between Bismillah and Ismul A'azam is lesser than the whiteness of the eye and the blackness of it. Therefore, a believer must start his every work with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
The second lesson we learn from this juz is to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every situation. A believer is always eager to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, irrespective of whatever situation he is in, be it happiness or trouble. We cannot even thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mah of breathing, because if we have to thank Him, we'll have to thank Him twice, one for inhaling the oxygen and then exhaling the carbon dioxide. So imagine if we cannot thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for one single mercy and blessing what He has bestowed us with, how can we thank Him for all other things? We find that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, at the time of happiness, he used to say, Alhamdulillahi ala kulli ni'mah, which means all praise is due to Allah for this blessing. And in difficult times, he used to say, Alhamdulillahi ala kulli hal, which means all praise is due to Allah in every circumstance. So it is upon the believer that a believer and a mu'min should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in each and every situation.
Ar-Rahmanir Rahim.
The third lesson we learn from this juz is that Allah is merciful. In the Quran, the words Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim have come around 118 times. This shows that Allah is merciful and beneficent. In the same way, a believer should also be merciful toward Allah and Allah's creation. It is possible that people may not be kind to each other, that a father may not show kindness to his children, and that an individual may not interact kindly with his life partner, neighbors, or friends. But a mu'min is always merciful with other mu'mineen and Muslimin.
Maliki Yawmiddin.
The fourth lesson we get from this juz is the remembrance of the Day of Judgment. A believer always remembers his death and never forgets that this is a temporary world and he will be going to the permanent world after this life and after his death. The society which is not spiritual or never remembers the next life spoils its a'mals and actions in this world. There is a hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The gist of the hadith is which says that this world is the field which is there to be plowed to reap its fruits for the akhirah, for the next world. Whenever one thinks about the akhirah, he should also think and plan what he will be taking from this world to the next world. Therefore, it is compulsory and recommended for a mu'min to remember the day of retribution, the day of judgment where he will be accountable.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
The fifth and the sixth lesson we learn is from this very verse where it says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, which means you alone do we worship and you alone do we turn for help. Now here it shows that all actions should be performed solely to get nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just for Allah and not to show off or for others. A believer and a mu'min performs his obligations like salah, fasting, hajj and charity and all the wajibat purely and sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain the qurbah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to get near to Him. The sixth lesson we get from the same verse is social worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stressed on unity and gatherings by using the word na'budu, which means we worship, instead of using the word a'budu, which means I worship. Now this stresses unity in gatherings in a Muslim society. Therefore, a Muslim is encouraged to perform most of his ibadat and obligations in a congregation, as we know that there is more thawab in congregation worship than individual worship. Quranic gatherings, dua, Laylatul Qadr, these are the different types of social worships. Therefore, it is recommended and encouraged that a mu'min should go and be a part of that social worship.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم.
The seventh lesson we learn from this juz is always search for the right path. A believer strives to find the right path and remains on it. He knows that this worldly life is not always in tune with the Islamic life. Therefore, he gives preference to Islamic ways and asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide him on the straight path. Therefore, a mu'min tries to live an Islamic life, a lifestyle which is shown by the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and should not adopt the bad culture. If we follow Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam properly, we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has shown us the righteous path.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
The eighth lesson we learn from this juz is to follow a good role model. In the last ayah, in the last verse, we said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on the right path. But what is this right path? It is the path to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent His blessings. In Surah Nisa, verse number 4, we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces those four groups, which are Nabiyyin, the messengers of Allah, the Siddiqeen, the truthful ones, the Salihin, the pure ones, and the Shuhada. So these are the four groups on whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed and sent down His blessings. Therefore, a mu'min should follow good role models shown by Quran and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us the great path and those great role models and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam being the best ones, a mu'min should try to follow their lives. The mu'min should take care that his role models should not be cartoons or actors. Rather, he should make his role models the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and walk on their footsteps. The ninth lesson we learn from this juz is to keep away from deviant path. This is also a prayer to keep away from the deviant path. A mu'min, a believer, always knows that any other path other than Sirat al-Mustaqim, other than the straight path, any other path than this would be the wrong and the deviant path. There is a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. The gist of the hadith is, it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent wahi and the revelation on Nabi, on one of the prophets, saying, tell the believers not to wear the dress of the enemy, not to eat the food of the enemy, and not to follow the footpath of the enemy. And there in the hadith it says that if you follow the enemy, then you will also become like the enemy. Enemies of Islam, disbelievers and deviant people wish that we believers and the mu'mineen and the Muslims leave the straight path. Until then, they will not be pleased with us. But a mu'min and a believer and a Muslim will never adopt Western or ugly culture or lifestyle by agreeing with them.
ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين.
The last and the 10th lesson we learn from this juz is make your heart ready to grasp Quran. Quran is the main criteria to lead a perfect life as it is shown in this verse, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. For virtuous people, there is a guidance to the right path from the Quran. We should make our hearts fertile enough for Quran to grow in it. A human should try to grasp Quran and implement in his own life as far as possible. Imam Khomeini said, Throughout the history, the success of Muslim Ummah is due to the blessing of Quran, and they will continue to succeed in future because of Quran. These were the 10 lessons we learned from Juz 1. Inshallah, again we'll be coming tomorrow with 10 more lessons from Juz 2. Till then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
رحمن يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري قرآن